Hey, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. Welcome again to the ACSS News Broadcast on sanctions against Russia. We are trying to make sense and follow the news against Russia. I mean, there's so much going on. We are following the EU sanctions, the US sanctions, the UK sanctions. And what we do with these shows is we'll guide you through what's happening in the world of sanctions against Russia and why it matters for your business. My name is Saskia Rietbroek, and I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Certified Sanctions Specialists. Please visit our website at sanctionsassociation.org and become a member. In this broadcast, we're going to take a look at things that happened yesterday. Big news from the United States. Yesterday, April 6th, OFAC, the US agency that is in charge of sanctions administration, part of Treasury, took major steps. So let me go through them, and then we'll also cover a little bit about what the EU has done or has announced at least. So yesterday, the Treasury, US Treasury, has placed full blocking sanctions on two large Russian banks. Full blocking sanctions. So that's the game over list, as I call it. So the first bank is Sberbank. This is Russia's largest state-owned bank. Sberbank is very important for the Russian economy, and it holds about a third of all bank assets in Russia, a third. So this is the largest bank in Russia. It's majority owned by the government of Russia. And this is a so-called systematic institution. So it is the main creditor of the Russian economy. And, it's one of those banks whose failure can trigger a big financial crisis. They're the ones they call too big to fail. So you could think, was this bank not sanctioned previously? Yes. In February, the US had already placed other sanctions on this bank, namely a prohibition to have correspondent relationships with US financial institutions. Basically, the correspondent relationships is when banks bank with each other. So, and they do that to be able to, for instance, conduct transactions in US dollars. So Sberbank already had a ban on conducting transactions in US dollars. So now, yesterday, the sanctions have been expanded to full blocking sanctions. So no more business at all with this bank. Its assets in the United States will be frozen. And not only of Sberbank itself, also of its 42 subsidiaries, banks, insurance companies, trusts that are owned by Sberbank. And I looked at the list, and most of them are located in Russia, but also in Kazakhstan, the Ukraine, Belarus, and then in Europe, Austria, Luxembourg, and Cyprus. And OFAC also said that all these entities, the entities that are not listed but are owned 50% or more directly or indirectly by Sberbank, are also blocked, even if not designated by OFAC. So that, in and of itself was really the sanction of the day, I think. Yesterday as well, OFAC put full blocking restrictions on Alpha Bank. So as I said, Sberbank is a state-owned bank, but Alpha Bank is Russia's largest privately owned financial institution. And I read that it's the fourth largest financial institution overall, also blocked. Was this bank sanctioned previously? Yes, as well. In February, the US placed new debt and equity restrictions on Alpha Bank, but now these, far-reaching blocking sanctions. And its subsidiaries were also targeted. The sanctions list six subsidiaries of Alpha Bank. 3 are based in Russia. Kazakhstan, and one, my home country, in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And so you might think this is the first time that a Russian bank has been blocked. No. Other Russian banks were listed previously on the SDN list, including VTB, Sovcombank, and this was in a previous round of sanctions back in February. Seems like a long time ago. OFAC issued some general licenses, 6 new ones actually, and I'm not going to list them all, but it's important to note that there is a general license that authorizes wind down transactions of Sberbank until June 7. So that's a pretty long period for OFAC. If you compare it previously when VTB and Sovcombank were designated, there was a wind down of only 1 month. And Alpha Bank also got a general license for winding down transactions, but they only got 1 month until May 6. What else did OFAC do? OFAC also designated 5 vessels owned by one of the subsidiaries of Alpha Bank. So these vessels are now blocked property. And it's, of course, if you follow this stuff, it's not abnormal that OFAC designates vessels. Often they are designated because they're involved in some sort of illicit practice, right? Like sanctions evasion practices. But now these vessels are listed, these 5 vessels are listed because they're owned by the subsidiary, one of the subsidiaries of Alpha Bank. What about other designations? Treasury also targeted family members of Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov, as well as Russian Security Council members. And it's interesting, I was in a panel earlier today from the Dutch Accountant Association, and one of the participants asked a question about, when a person is sanctioned, are their first degree or second degree family members automatically or considered to be sanctioned as well? And that is not the case. So they actually have to put them on the list, and that's what they're doing right now. And it makes sense because sometimes the oligarchs will use family members to put, assets or property or these nice yachts that they own on the name of their daughters or wives. So that is what they want to avoid, that the property is being transferred to a family member. Of course, not all family members agree with what's, with these oligarchs and what's going on. They publicly announced that they are, against this whole the invasion. But anyway, so OFAC listed these family members of Putin and Lavrov. What else? Another super important, in my opinion, development in the US was that the White House issued a new executive order that bans any new investment in Russia. And it then also bans the provision of certain services to any person located in the Russian Federation by US persons wherever located. So this is a major development, okay? Basically, they're banning any new investment in the Russian Federation. So this is not limited to a specific sector. Like earlier, right, when you remember the sanctions against China, there were some, the US government prohibited investments in certain sectors like defense and surveillance industry. This new ban is a new investment ban, so new investment ban in any sector. And as you heard, some companies have already left Russia, maybe for, because of their moral compass or because they saw this coming or reputation reasons, right? I think like General Motors left Russia, ExxonMobil, Disney, Spotify, and some other companies. But the companies that stayed, this will be difficult to deal with. They can no longer do any new investments whatsoever unless they have a license. So it will be hard for them to stay in Russia. What else? So there was also a prohibition to export, re-export, sale, supply directly or indirectly from the United States or by a US person wherever located of any category of services as may determined by Secretary of State. So we don't know which categories of services those are. Those must still be provided. And so anyway, so I think this is a major development from the United States side. On the EU side, I mentioned this on Tuesday already in our previous broadcast. The EU has announced a fifth package of sanctions against Russia. I haven't seen the Council decision and regulation yet. I was checking earlier this morning. But just to summarize, Ursula von der Leyen yesterday did a speech before the European Parliament, and she sort of, summarized what this fifth package is. 6 pillars: import ban on coal from Russia. So this is for the EU, no more coal from Russia. And I understand that this is the first time that the EU directly sanctions the import of fossil fuels from Russia. Second, the EU has announced a full transaction ban on 4 Russian banks, among them VTB, but they haven't mentioned the other 3 banks. This will definitely further weaken the Russian financial system, but I don't know the names of these banks. Then vessels. The EU also has announced a ban on Russian vessels and Russian-operated vessels. So those that don't have the flag of Russia but are operated by a Russian owner, they have been banned from accessing EU ports. And again, the details are not there yet. As you remember, the UK has done something similar. They banned Russian ships to go to its ports. But I'm just wondering, the practical implications of something like that. I was talking to an expert in the maritime sector earlier today, and he told me, he doubts who's going to check this, right? Do the ports have technology in place to screen whatever comes in is either, Russian flagged or operated by Russians? It's not very likely that, ports like the Port of Rotterdam or Port of Antwerp have this technology in place that does this, especially when you think of, you have to check beneficial owners. It's not an easy thing to do. Can it be done? Yeah, of course. And the information, is there. I understand that a ship, when it leaves a port, needs to send the so-called notice of arrival to the next port. So the information, the ports have this information of the arriving ships, of course, and they could then, screen these notices and determine if they're going to accept a vessel or not. So I think, this underscores once again that the obligations that come from these sanctions are not just applicable to financial institutions. Others, like port authorities or any other company, is also obliged to follow the sanctions. So and then there was some other, so that in terms of this ban against Russian ships calling on European ports. And then there were some other announcements from the EU, again in her speech. She said that there will be a ban on Russian and Belarusian road transport operators. There will be an export ban on things like quantum computers, advanced semiconductors, and other sensitive machinery and transportation equipment. And then there are some new import bans as well on wood, cement, seafood, and liquor, to name just a few. So, so those were some of the sanctions. And finally, it's going to be a general ban on participation of Russian companies in public procurement in member states, EU member states. And one thing that is still coming, maybe, she also mentioned this in one of her speeches in the last couple of days. She said, right now they banned coal, right? In this fifth package that is coming. But they are also going to look into oil. So maybe that is still on the horizon for next sanctions. So this was it for today. in terms of big developments, right? We talked about what's happening in the United States, these blocking sanctions on Sberbank and Alpha Bank, this ban on new investments in Russia, and then the fifth EU sanctions package. I hope you will visit our website at sanctionsassociation.org and check out our courses on EU sanctions, on OFAC sanctions. We have several courses coming up. So looking forward to seeing you there if you would like to know more. And let's see if we have any questions from the audience. Okay, we're just going to wait a little. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay. I have I cannot see directly what's going on LinkedIn because I'm in this studio. So any comments as well, if you have any comments, anything you would like me to cover. One of our listeners asked me to go into detail on one of these broadcasts on what's going on with the telecom sector. So I hope to do that next week. And if you have any other requests, you can put them in the chat. All right, so people are thanking me. You're welcome. We're just trying to, we know how hard it is for people in the field who deal with sanctions to follow all this stuff. So we sort of try to summarize some of the major developments that went on today or very recently yesterday. All right, I think that's it. I want to thank everybody. Okay, here's a question from Mark. If oil is sanctioned, how significant is this? Well, I think that is going to be significant. I don't have numbers in terms of, how much more oil is being imported from Russia as opposed to coal. Coal, I understand is, and I saw this number somewhere. Let's check 1 second. I think I mentioned it was like 4 billion or so, worth 4 billion a year. So I don't know how much, I don't know if there are any oil experts here, how much oil. All right. Giancarlo's asking, what do you foresee to be the next round of US sanctions? I wish I knew, right? One of the things that I'm surprised that the US hasn't done yet is, and where the EU has gone a little further than the US, and so maybe that is something that they will still do, is deposit restrictions, right, at US financial institutions. So in one of the packages earlier in the EU sanctions rounds, they have imposed restrictions on 100,000. They have capped basically the deposits of Russian people from Russia in EU financial institutions at 100,000. So that is something that the US hasn't done. And I don't know if they will do it, but that could be something, right? Because they are lining it up, right? They often try to be consistent with what is going on, what kind of sanctions are being issued in the EU and in the US and in the UK. It's also interesting to see that the EU has gone further in terms of sanctioning oligarchs than the US. I heard that, normally the US takes a sort of like a first step in sanctioning people. Some of the people that are being placed on the list have been on the US list for a long time, but that's not the case with some of these oligarchs. So they're listed in the EU and not in the US. So maybe the US will sanction those oligarchs that they haven't placed yet and that are on the EU list, also on the US list. So that may be something coming down the road. All right, see if there's any other questions. Thank you for your questions. And if not, we'll see you tomorrow, Friday, again at 5 p.m. European time, Central European time, 11 a.m. US time. Thank you very much and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.